Good morning. Welcome to the Long Live Alternative Parties podcast. Free Press Media Press Inc., an alternative parties books publisher, sponsors this podcast. I'm Andrew Bouchard.
Welcome to the Long Live Alternative Parties podcast. Today we have the Vanderbilt Libertarians. They're going to talk about all the exciting things they're doing, and the person representing them is named Roark. So welcome to the podcast, Roark.
Yes, hello. So good to meet you.
Good to meet you as well. So let us get started by, first of all, I'm curious, because your last name is Roark, is that named after anybody?
Actually, it's my middle name, so that's what
everyone
calls me. Yeah, I'm actually named after Howard Roark from Ayn Rand's The Fountainhead.
Interesting. So your parents are libertarians?
Yes, they are, but I grew up in the Bay Area of California, so our family was pretty apolitical. They didn't really get involved in politics. My parents didn't vote. So they met each other at an objectivist conference, and they raised my sister and I with libertarian values, but kind of wasn't really explicitly political my whole life.
Interesting. So how else would you describe yourself? How else would you introduce yourself to our audience?
Yeah, so I am a current senior at Vanderbilt University in Nashville, Tennessee, and I have been the president of Vanderbilt Libertarians for about 3 years. I'm studying economics, political science, and Chinese, and I'm really passionate about freedom and rights and the environment and the free market, basically.
Interesting. So because you grew up with a family that had a libertarian background, you did mention that they weren't super political, but you did have a background. How else did you dive into libertarian views?
Yeah, so growing up in the Bay Area, of course, I was surrounded by a lot of really liberal messaging, and I kind of felt like I grew up in a bubble, and because of that, I kind of thought maybe I identified more as a conservative because I had never really been exposed to that ideology before, and everything I knew about it came from the internet. So when I decided to go to college, I moved to Tennessee, and being exposed to some of the more Republican side of the aisle, I really decided that wasn't for me, so I kind of came back around to libertarianism and just sort of got involved with Students for Liberty, which is an international student group. They're on every continent except Antarctica now, and I became a local coordinator with them, and I met a lot of awesome people, started up Vanderbilt Libertarians, and started going to conferences and stuff, and I've just met so many amazing people through the Liberty movement. I've interned at 2 wonderful libertarian organizations, and I've just learned so much in the past 4 years after leaving the Bay Area and exposing myself to a more diverse worldview.
So you said you started Vanderbilt Libertarians, right?
Yes, me and a group of other people as well.
What was that process like?
So actually, there was a group already on campus called Young Americans for Liberty, but it had been kind of extinct. I mean, they were a registered student organization, but nobody had been running the club for about 2 years when I came to campus in 2018. So one of Vanderbilt's rules is that you're not allowed to start a new organization that has pretty much the same purpose as an existing one. So we kind of took over Young Americans for Liberty. Yeah, and we tried to kind of get involved with them a little bit, but we had some ideological differences in our goals, so we kind of split off from them around 2020 and became Vanderbilt Libertarians.
They're more conservative in nature, right?
Yes, they call themselves a libertarian organization, but my experience is that they definitely lean more conservative, and when they do get involved in politics, it's usually for Republican candidates. So we just didn't really match eye to eye with our goals, so we decided to just end our relationship.
Sure. So what is Vanderbilt like in general? What's the demographics? What's the campus environment like?
Yeah, I personally, I love the campus environment. It's one of the reasons I chose to go to Vanderbilt. I feel like it's definitely a very chill vibe. Like I had visited some other campuses, some Ivy League schools, and they were a little bit more hoity-toity, kind of stuffy, and everybody kind of was acting like they knew they were the best, which, I mean, to be fair, that's fair. They're at an Ivy League school, but I just didn't really I didn't like that attitude. So I found that Vanderbilt was a lot more humble, and people were obviously very smart and talented, but they didn't really, advertise that necessarily. So I really like that aspect. And then I also feel like because Nashville is a blue city and a red state, the politics are not as out of whack as they probably are in, say, Berkeley, or maybe in a more southern rural town, like maybe, I know this isn't in the South, but Hillsdale, Michigan. I know Hillsdale College is kind of in a rural area, but I kind of liked that it was definitely a balanced campus. Of course, because it's a college campus, it leans liberal, but it's still the South, and there's still some, there's a lot of people who are just apolitical, which is fine. So I kind of like that. It's not an overtly political campus, which I kind of enjoy.
Sure. So what activities has your Libertarian Club done so far?
Yeah, so one big challenge has been COVID. So obviously I'm attending Vanderbilt from 2018 to 2022. So a big part of that has been taken up by COVID. And for the first year that COVID was around, we were kind of forced to move online and do speaker events like that, which was awesome. I mean, we got to have some really amazing speakers like Yaron Brook from the Ayn Rand Institute and some stuff like that. But I really appreciated the in-person events we've put on. For example, we had Matthew Charles. He's a criminal justice reform activist and the first person to benefit from the First Step Act. We had him come to campus, and because criminal justice reform is such a bipartisan issue, we really got everybody from all sides of the aisle to show up for that event. Another thing that we've been able to do is we actually helped to co-host Free Your Future Fest, which is Students for Liberty's North American conference. They used to do it annually in Washington, D.C. before COVID, but they had to stop due to the pandemic, and we helped them put on the first post-pandemic conference, and it was in Nashville because, it was a little bit more relaxed in Washington, D.C., so we helped them put that on, and so many people attended, I think over 500 people, but it was kind of just an educational event with speakers like Joe Jorgensen and Judge Jim Gray and everything like that, and then, comedians and musicians from Nashville, because of course Nashville is Music City, and it was just a really awesome event, and probably one of the first major things that we've been able to do post-pandemic. So mostly, speakers and educational events. We've done a couple volunteer events as well. We volunteered with the National Food Project, and we've also volunteered with a couple state parks to clean up the rivers and the state parks from litter and pollution and things like that. So, yeah, kind of a wide range of activities, but basically whatever our members are interested in and whoever wants to talk to us, we always invite them, and we have a couple recurring speakers that are local to Nashville that we love talking to.
Interesting. So how has the campus received your club? You did mention you had good attendance for that one event. How has the reception been? Have they been favorable? What has it been like?
Yeah, there really hasn't been much hostility. I mean, even for the college Republicans, I know they're a little bit bigger than us because they are involved with, the larger college Republican brand. They sometimes get a little bit of pushback, but mostly I think all the political organizations on campus are they're pretty collaborative. I mean, we have a group chat where we all promote our events and decide what we can co-host together, regardless of which side of the aisle we fall on. So I haven't really experienced any hostility on campus, at least towards libertarian ideals. I know there are a couple unaffiliated with Vanderbilt Libertarians, but there are some pretty far-right people on campus that have been very loud and vocal, and they've got a little bit of pushback, but nothing moderate really receives much pushback. Again, like I said, a lot of people are just apolitical, so they don't really care, and I kind of appreciate that because I don't think everybody has to be involved in politics. So I kind of appreciate that some people are just willing to say, look, I'm not interested. I'm an engineering major. I just want to study engineering. I don't want to talk about politics, and they just leave us alone, which I really appreciate.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Mhm.
So you're building coalitions, it sounds like.
Yeah, we've had events with both the college Republicans and the Democratic Socialists of America, as well as the college Democrats and the Alexander Hamilton Society. So basically, whenever our interests align, it's not really an issue to collaborate with other student organizations.
Yeah, that's good. It sounds like you're reaching all across the spectrum for views.
Yeah, that's what we try to do. I mean, like, we try and make libertarianism more approachable. We tell people you don't have to be a libertarian to join our club. A lot of people weren't when they first joined, but we try and make it a bit more approachable instead of it being kind of the ideological purity test that a lot of, really staunch libertarians can make it out to be. We're not trying to make sure everybody's aligned with us 100%. We're just trying to open people's minds up to opinions that they might not have heard before in a safe, so-called safe space where they can question things and not be, scared to voice their opinions and things like that.
That sounds good. Since you said you were a senior, after you leave, is there going to be a good transition? Are there still going to be a lot of activities, do you think?
Yeah, so a couple of our members, our really active members, are freshmen and sophomores right now. So I've spoken to a couple of them, and they're really interested in taking over the executive board. So when we get back to campus, I'm looking forward to talking with them and sharing my experience over the past 3 years and how I've kind of put things on for the club.
So since you founded the club, and you were the president too, right?
I have been for the past 3 years, yeah.
Okay, so what are the roles and responsibilities for the president of a college club like yours? Maybe some people in the audience are in college, or maybe they're in high school and they're going to college. So what would they expect to do in your role?
Yeah, so I primarily am the one who's dealing with the administration. So when I have to get our funds from our school account, I'm the one submitting the reimbursements. I also register all our events and our organization every year with the administration to make sure that we're compliant with all of their rules so that they can't shut us down. We're following everything that we're supposed to be doing. And then I am the one who reaches out to speakers primarily and has the ultimate say on events, but I would also say that other members of the board and even the general body provide the ideas for the events that we're going to put on. And I like to delegate certain tasks to, for example, the email list. We use HubSpot, and that's the job of the secretary to take care of. So it's kind of mainly just being the last say on things and then making sure that we're compliant with the university and that we're, showing a good face towards speakers and donors and everything like that.
Is there a lot of bureaucracy involved in registering the organization and filling out the paperwork to be compliant?
Not really. It's just kind of the same as any other student organization on campus. Every year you have to register the organization by submitting the names of everybody on the board, and then for events on campus, you need to get them registered with the university by providing details and, licenses to screen any films. And as long as you do that well ahead of time, I'd say it's pretty easy to stay compliant. But when you start planning things last minute, because of administration takes so long to get back to you, you can kind of start, having things being accepted at the last minute or not being accepted at all. So I would definitely say in terms of dealing with administration, it's not difficult, but make sure that you're planning these things ahead of time to make sure that there's no bumps in the road.
Sure. So it's the beginning of January. Did your semester start yet, or is it going to start soon?
Yeah, originally we were actually supposed to start 2 days ago on Monday, but at the last minute, Vanderbilt kind of decided to give us an extra week of break and push back the entire semester by 1 week to get people time to get tested for COVID and submit their test results to a portal and just have a little bit of extra time to kind of try and curb the surge of the Omicron variant after the holidays, which I'm not really sure how effective it's going to be, but so we're now starting next week instead, and then our finals are pushed back a week. So yeah, it kind of looked like we were going to be one of the few schools who wasn't doing anything after the holidays, but I think at the last minute they kind of felt the pressure and decided to hold back a week.
Oh, interesting. So what are you planning for the rest of the semester? Anything special if it's not top secret?
Yeah, so actually I'm involved with another student organization. I'm the vice president of Vanderbilt Vegans as well. So I just recently reached out to a speaker who I also know through Students for Liberty, but they are part of the White Coat Waste Project, which is something that I find really interesting because it kind of intersects both my interests, veganism and libertarianism. It's basically a organization that educates about government wasteful spending on unethical animal testing and projects and research and stuff like that, and kind of tries to lobby against those wasteful spendings. So I actually know a person involved with that project through Students for Liberty, which I'm also involved with, and we're probably going to do a speaking event, which I could feel like is very interesting because, you know, talking about government waste is not something that most people are really that interested in, but when it's about a cause that most people can get behind, I think that's when people start to kind of be like, okay, sure, I'm on board with this. This is not necessary. This is wrong. So I'm really interested in having an event with her. And then, you know, there are some really amazing local organizations in Nashville. So For All Tennessee is a lobbying group that has just started up in Tennessee, and they love speaking to us, and they're awesome, and they have the right ideas about things like ballot access reform. And then there's also the Beacon Center of Tennessee, which is also in Nashville. They're kind of like the Cato Institute, but for Tennessee. They're awesome. They, you know, keep an eye on the Tennessee state government and are kind of watchdogs for wasteful spending. So we love talking to them. There's also the Constitution Study. We love Paul there. He loves speaking to us. He's so knowledgeable about the Constitution and current events. So we have people in Nashville who we have great relationships with, and it's always great to catch up with them. For example, the Beacon Center puts out a regular pork report about the wasteful spending that the Tennessee government partakes in every year, and it's always funny to hear, you know, updates about that. For example, you know, spending millions on a TV show in Memphis that never ended up happening. So we kind of have people in Nashville talking about local issues that we always love to talk to.
Sure. Since you mentioned that you were a vegan, what do you think the government policy should be on animal rights? Do you think it should ban animal products altogether, or do you think it should regulate it? How do you think it should handle it?
I mean, because I am a libertarian, I don't really believe that anything can be changed through the arm of the government, and I don't want it to be. So, of course, I think animal testing and animal products and using animal furs and skins is wrong, but, of course, I don't think the way to deal with that is the government. I think it's through education and the market providing alternatives, viable alternatives, which I think are really on the rise, especially in the last couple of years. So I'm always wary of the government being a solution to anything. I think they just make things worse. And I usually, I try and think of free market ways that these ideas can kind of change the social norms.
Sure. So with veganism, people buying more vegan products rather than other products by creating the market, then it advances the cause.
Right, yeah. And I mean, a lot of people kind of view vegans as being very dogmatic because, you know, organizations like PETA kind of use some not so great tactics. But I mean, I know a lot of people who are sympathetic to the cause. They're not necessarily 100% vegan, but they cut back on meat, or they, you know, don't buy leather because, you know, there's this new brand of steak leather using mushrooms that's a viable alternative. I don't know. There's just a lot of ways that the market's been able to kind of embrace a plant-based, you know, solution. And because the environment is on everyone's minds, I think it's also,
Sure.
you know, I think a really awesome way that the free market is helping to deal with the climate crisis.
Sounds good. So how can our audience, whether they live in your area, whether they're on your campus or elsewhere, how can they support the Vanderbilt Libertarians?
Yes, so definitely I would say get involved with Students for Liberty. I got involved with them before I graduated high school, and I started as a local coordinator my freshman year. They're awesome. They've been so helpful. both financially and just in terms of, making connections. I was able to intern at both the Institute for Justice and the Goldwater Institute through connections I had at Students for Liberty. And they just provide so many resources for student organizations, liberty-minded, and they just have such a diverse group of people involved in their network. I feel like they're probably the most diverse group of libertarians that I've ever met in terms of student organizations. So I love Students for Liberty. It's very easy to get involved with them. It doesn't require dues like some other organizations, and they've been instrumental in growing our club. And then also, I think just, following our social medias. We're on Facebook, Instagram, things like that. And also, just, starting up something local in your area. We work with, the Libertarians at UT Knoxville and the Libertarians at Belmont University in Nashville sometimes. So having those connections in your state and in your region is really helpful. Even if your organization's small, it's having a voice on campus is super important.
Sure. Excellent. Roark, thank you for coming on the podcast today and sharing your views with our audience.
Yes, thank you so much for having me.
Our pleasure. I wish you all the best in your future endeavors, both your personal and your political endeavors.
Great. Thank you so much. Good luck with your podcast.
Have a great day. Bye now.